Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. I am your host and beat reporter, and I have been your beat reporter covering the Jacksonville Jaguars for On SI every single day since August 2019, and we are continuing to move forward through yet another offseason together. As always, you can always find our 100% free, 24/7 boots on the ground coverage of the Jacksonville Jaguars when you follow us on social media such as Facebook and Twitter at Jaguars on SI. You can also find us at www.si.com/NFL/Jaguars. All right, folks, welcome to today's episode. Today we are talking about day 9 of Jaguars training camp. Took place Sunday morning at the Miller Electric Center, 2 days after their live padded stadium scrimmage at Everbank Stadium. You could tell it was a practice that the Jaguars were really focusing on big. You know, a lot of one offense versus one defense, a lot of red zone work, a lot of third down work, a lot of one-on-ones. It definitely felt to me like one of the more competitive days of the Jaguars training camp so far. You know, there were a few standouts. One, I think, you guys are probably tired of hearing me talk about him, but Travis Hunter, folks. He has looked significantly better at wide receiver over the last, I'd say, week than he has at any other point as a Jaguar, in my opinion. Because you guys have heard me say before, and this is something I've talked to scouts around the league about. I've talked to a coach on an opposing team about. The book on Travis coming out of college was that as an athlete on the offensive side of the ball, one of the most dynamic guys you can find on the field. Get the ball in his hands, and he is going to make a play. But there was some questions about, just how ready is he to be a full-time NFL wide receiver? Because just in terms of refinement, technique, the little details that can make or break a wide receiver at the NFL level, he didn't necessarily need them in college. In college, he was the best athlete on the field, and it wasn't even close. You could throw him a screen, and there was a chance he could house it. You know, he could run a slant, he could run a fly, and he could take it all the way, take it the distance. In the NFL, it's not quite that easy. Now, he's still, I'd say, one of the better athletes on the field. What you saw from him in the stadium scrimmage the other night, I think, with the ball in his hands, he's obviously very electric. He's very explosive. But I think that entering the NFL, he needed to work on things like route running, like his release packages, like his timing, getting to, his landmarks. And I think as a whole, Travis Hunter has really developed in that sense. I mean, I remember watching him at the first rookie minicamp practice that was open to the media and watching him at receiver. And he looked like, it looked like a baby deer learning how to walk in a lot of ways. It just very, I don't think clumsy is the right word, but very awkward maybe at times. It was clear that he needed more time on task at the wide receiver position. And that's what he's gotten in Jacksonville. He's gotten plenty of time to work that position, both physically and mentally, to kind of get the little things that have to do with being a star wide receiver in the NFL. And to me, he has taken that leap forward. He had a great scrimmage on Friday. He had a really good offensive practice earlier in the week. And then he capped it off on Sunday with another really impressive practice. Outside of one play where a ball from Trevor Lawrence, so it was like a 5 or 6 yard pass, went off his hands and it was intercepted by Andrew Wingard. I didn't see Travis make any plays where you're like, oh, that was a miss. That was an L in terms of a rep. To me, and I said this the other day, he is their toughest wide receiver to cover in one-on-ones. Now, I know one-on-ones aren't exactly the full, scope of what you see during an NFL game rep, and it's very much so its own kind of unique, practice tool. So, how valuable is it to be effective in one-on-ones? That's definitely a fair question. But to me, that's where you see the physical traits really pop out. And Jordan Lewis, the veteran cornerback the Jaguars signed this offseason, has, I'd say, if you're asking me who are the 5 players who have had the best training camps, he's probably in the top 3. And Travis Hunter gave him the work on Sunday. Jordan Lewis has been able to, cover all kinds of different receivers. He's made all kinds of plays since coming to the Jaguars. He struggled with Travis Hunter on Sunday. Just the quickness, the way he's able to move in space, the shiftiness, the explosiveness, the change of direction, and then the ball skills. He made one play against Jordan Lewis in the end zone. He beats him off the line. Jordan Lewis is able to recover, beats him out of the break again, and then the ball is put in a spot where only Travis Hunter can get it. And he contorts himself while in the air, gets the ball, comes down with it in the end zone. He had several really impressive reps in one-on-one. So I think Travis Hunter's development at wide receiver is very notable. And I think it's somewhere where I think, me personally, my expectations for him, he's come along quicker than maybe I anticipated. And, of course, we need to see him in a real game. We'll see how much he plays against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Saturday. But Travis Hunter, to me, had another great practice on Sunday. Another guy who had a great practice, Tyson Campbell. Folks, he has frustrated Brian Thomas Jr. this training camp. And like I've said before, and like I wrote in my observations piece from practice that you can read at Jaguars on SI, Brian Thomas Jr. has had a very similar training camp to last year's training camp. He started very slow in last year's training camp. It wasn't until the practice before the first preseason game against the Kansas City Chiefs that he really made a wow play. I can remember it like it was yesterday. It was on the far field, the nearest end zone to where the media can watch, in the top right corner of the end zone, and he completely head-topped Ronald Darby. That, to me, was when Brian Thomas arrived, because then the next day or 2 days after, however long ago, that Chiefs game was after that fact, he makes that incredible catch against the Chiefs. Then Tampa Bay comes in next week, and he just completely demolishes Tampa Bay secondary. And he starts to pick it up from there. And then the regular season starts, and he starts to go crazy in the regular season. So to me, he's having a very similar training camp to that last year where, it's not like he's not making any plays. He's definitely making plays. Outside of one play, he had a good scrimmage on Friday. But it's been very much up and down for him. And the defense, in my opinion, you can tell is frustrating him. Tyson Campbell locked him up on Sunday. Tyson Campbell had one of his better practices, and Tyson, it was interesting talking to him after practice. He said he actually got bigger this offseason. He said he's at 205 right now. He doesn't think that he's lost any of his quickness or any of his speed, which, I haven't noticed for a second, Tyson being any slower than he's been in the past. Like I just mentioned, Jordan Lewis has been one of those best players in training camp. I'd say Tyson Campbell has been right up there. Weirdly, one of the only guys who seemingly has beat Tyson Campbell in practice has been Joshua Cephas. So it's been a really strong training camp for Tyson. He's really, I think, iron sharpens iron is, of course, the mantra when it comes to him and Brian Thomas Jr. But I'd say he's gotten the best of Brian Thomas Jr. this training camp, and especially so on Sunday. And then I think when you're looking at the totality of, the rest of the practice, Chuma Edoga stood out to me. I think Chuma Edoga is somebody who, they're still waiting for Patrick McCary to really come back. It looked like he did some individual drills on Sunday, but not quite ready for team drills. Chuma at right guard has been really impressive. There was one play where Trayvon Walker stunted inside and was able to get pressure on Trevor Lawrence. Otherwise, I thought Chuma had a really strong day. He has a really good anchor at the point of attack. I think that power is very clear and very evident. Another guy who I think is worth pointing out is Jack Kaiser. He's definitely there's been some moments where he's kind of been sunned out there. Baishao Tun made a miss in space on Sunday. LaQuint Allen did the same in the stadium scrimmage on Friday. But, man, it seems like Jack Kaiser keeps making plays. Had a pick six of Nick Mullins on Sunday. And the days before that, he's had some big run stops. He's gotten a sack. He's really kind of been a guy who's been all over the field for them on those reserve units. So, I'm not anticipating an increased role for Jack Kaiser anytime soon or anything like that. But I do think Jack Kaiser is somebody who has definitely flashed over the last week. And when you look at their rookie class, Travis Hunter's obviously been spectacular. Caleb Ransaw is week to week. They announced that earlier this week. Wyatt Milam's been exclusively with the second team. Baishao Tun's handled, a hamstring injury. Jalen McLeod is now injured. Rayon Lane has been with the second team. LaQuint Allen has been mostly with the third team, some snaps with the second team. It isn't a rookie class that outside of Travis Hunter has really popped yet. So to me, a very good sign to see Jack Kaiser start to put some things together. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. As always, please like, follow, review, subscribe, whatever you got to do on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and all other podcast platforms.